everyone, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be making this loaf of cinnamon roll bread. It is the actual loaf that we will be making in this video. So let's roll time back, go back to the beginning when I started making this loaf, and let's get started. The sooner we start, the sooner you can eat. All right, now let's start making the actual bread dough. The first thing I am going to be doing is using my mixer bowl. I just have a small 3-4 quart stand mixer, so I'm going to be using that. There's a little bit of flour left in there from previous usage when I just got done making. And I'm also have here is 3 cups of all-purpose flour. This flour is just put into a measuring cup, leveled off, and then I dumped it into this bowl. It's not sifted or anything like that. But what I do is I do grab a sifter, and I do like to run it after it's been measured. Do not measure it as a 3 cups of sifted flour. Again, measure it unsifted, and then run it through the sifter so that it'll get rid of the little what do you call those, like little balls of flour that form that you know, don't dissolve or break down or anything like that. To me, it just causes bad spots in the bread, so I just run it through a sifter, and you know, it bounces around, gets rid of most of them. You can see there's a couple in there. I'm not worried about that. So that gives us our base of 3 cups of flour that is now sifted. Next, I will start my yeast. For yeast, what I do is I put in about a tablespoon of sugar in a small cup. I'll then run some water, get it warm, not scalding. I'll put it in with the sugar, stir it up just a little bit so that I have, you know, some lukewarm sugar water started. And then I will come over and add in 2.5 teaspoons of yeast. So 1, 2.5. So I put that in there, give it a little stir so the yeast gets wet, meets with the sugar. And what this does is it gives the yeast time to start waking up and becoming active before I actually throw it into the dough to bring it to life all the way. So now that we have that, what we're going to do is next add in about 3 teaspoons of sugar and a 1/4 cup of dry milk. Now this is what I use, just regular non-fat dry milk powder, and as you can see, I already put some of the sugar in with it just to help the yeast along when it goes in there. So I just pour that into the flour mixture. Next is a 1/2 cup of instant mashed potatoes. And yep, you heard that right. No good bread goes without mashed potatoes. Make sure you get the unflavored instant potatoes. You don't want the butter flavoring or anything like that. This adds a nice little volume to it and a good amount of texture. So I'll go ahead and add that to my mixture. Next, I'll add in just about a teaspoon, a little over a teaspoon of salt. Get that in there for just a tad bit of flavoring. As you can see over here on my yeast, it's starting to bubble, so that means the yeast is starting to wake up and activate. What this does is helps make for fluffier bread because you don't have the yeast trying to find the sugar and everything that's inside of the dough in order to wake up and start working. You already have it waking up. So just give that a quick little stir with the fork here before I add it onto the mixer stand. And I will be doing that in a time loop. But what I'm going to do is take a stick of butter minus 2 tablespoons, so basically 6 tablespoons of butter. It's nice and soft, room temperature. I'll be adding that in with the mixer along with about 1 cup of warm water. You start off with adding about 3/4 of the cup while the mixer is going, continually scraping the sides down, and then if you need to add more, add more. But after I add some of the water in, I'll add the yeast in as well. So that helps distribute the yeast rather than just throwing it in on top of the powder as it is now. So I'm going to go ahead, move this aside, plug my mixer in, and start mixing those items together. And there you go. Once it starts to be a nice consistent looking ball, you can take it out. You can feel the warm water is there. Just clean your hook off a little bit and then remove the pan. And now what I do is I just take the standard nine-inch baking pan, and I'll just give it a quick little spritz with some baking spray. I use the Baker's Joy. It's the kind that's got the flour in it so that you don't have to worry about it being pure oil and cooking everything. So once I have that, I'll take my dough ball and I'll just use my hands. Don't need to really do too much on the countertop, but I'll just work the dough just a little bit here and just form it into a nice little ball here and set it in the middle of this pan. And then I'll take just a little bit of water and just rub the top of it with just a little bit of water so that it doesn't dry out. And then I'll put a cloth over this and we'll let it sit for a couple of hours until it about doubles in size. So I'm going to set this aside now and explain to you what our filling is. Our filling is basically a 1/4 cup of just regular sugar with 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour and 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. And we're just going to mix all of this together, and we're going to set it aside for after the bread gets done raising. What we're going to do is lay the bread out, punch it down, shape it into the roll, add this filling for the roll, and then put it into the bread pan. And then once it's in the bread pan, we will set it aside again and let it do its final rising before we bake. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the side, and we'll wait until it finishes rising. Alright, it has been just about an hour, and you can see that we've got a really good rise on the dough. So the first thing I'm going to do is I take my wedding ring off so it doesn't get all gooey, and do a real quick wash of my hands. Now the surface that we're about to put this on has already been cleaned off very well, so I'm not going to show that part of it, but I did wash it down. I'm just going to take the protective coating of flour, push it down on the counter here. That way we have a little working surface to work with. And we're also going to be using an egg, and that's just to help everything stick together once it's assembled and we have it rising again. So I'm just going to go ahead and crack the egg and stir it up. That way we don't have to worry about that. Grab our dough, and we're just going to put it down here. Just give it a nice little soft knead. You can just work it over a little bit. We don't have to do a whole lot of kneading on it. But we will be working it into a long rectangle so that we can lay it out and start putting the filling in. So as I do this, we're going to be cooking it at 350. So when I leave it to rest again, I will be turning the oven on and letting it go ahead and do all the preheating and everything while the dough is rising for the second time. And just keep working it. And if every once in a while you have to reach over, get a little water to help your hands, you can do that. Most of the time people put too much water in it in the beginning, so the dough is usually overly sticky, and the flour is needed to keep it from sticking to everything, including your hands. But in this case, it was taken out at a real good time. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to be putting it into a little, this is a 4x8 bread pan. So we want to make sure that the edges will fit well within that 4x8. So these were just a little wide. So I'm just going to fold them over on the edge, work them back in there. Excuse me. And there we have it. So now I'll just take the egg wash, and I usually just do this on real light, not that heavy, because you only really need it to stick enough while it's rolling up. This is not an exact art, so just slap it on there, keep smothering it, and there you have that. Now I am going to go ahead, and like I said, I do use the little spray on the pan just in case. So I just put a little on the pan to get it ready. Now I take my mixture that we had earlier, we had sitting aside, and we just spread that evenly. I try to avoid the very ends. That way we can get ourselves a good seal. So put this down just a rough amount. Then use this highly sophisticated method of distribution. As you can see, there's plenty of filling. There you go. Now I'm just going to be rolling it into a roll, and then I'll be putting it into the pan. So just simply start on the edges and make it a nice tight roll. Try not to let the edges go out of the roll that far, so just keep tucking them in and make it a good solid roll. Easy. Then you pinch off the edges. If it's a little too wet, you can go ahead and add some more egg whites. And then bring it up, and then you'll be turning that side down flat. Pinch off your sides. Take it in, put it into your box, cover it up, and we'll let it sit for about another hour. Let it rise until it's about an inch above the top. So I am going to cover this up, set it over to the side here, and clean up this mess while it's rising, and preheat the oven to 350. I'll be back. All right, it's been about another hour, and it looks like we got a good rise. The bread's filled out the pan, it's coming out the top nicely. So we're going to go ahead and put this in our preheated oven. Again, that was at 350. So for the first 15 minutes, we're going to put it in for 15 minutes as it is. And then after 15 minutes, we're just going to take a piece of tin foil and loosely make a tent out of it. I'm not going to blow your eardrums out by finishing making the tent on the camera, but just basically after 15 minutes put a tent so that we don't over dry out and make the top of the loaf crunchy, and then we'll put it in for another roughly 25 minutes after that, and then we'll start checking to see if it's done. So let's go ahead and get that in the oven and start eating. Okay, the cinnamon bread has been in the oven for roughly 45-50 minutes. I've already peeked under the foil tent, so this is what it looks like right now. The cracking that you see up here on this first layer is due to me having rolled that a little too thin. So next time I would hold off on making the last wrap around the bread being so thin, and then you won't have the breaking, but it does give it a nice split top look. Now I'm going to remove it from the pan. Hopefully it'll come out fairly easy. And that was overly easy and extremely hot. Now you remember the extra 2 butters that we did not use out of the stick, how we only used 6 out of the 8. Well, now you use the other 2, just melt it down a little bit and then just brush it onto the bread and let it soak in. It helps keep the bread from getting crunchy, and when it dries out or cools down, not when it dries out, helps prevent it from drying out when it cools down. So just brush it on as liberally as you want, and now we just sit back, let it cool for a bit. Once it's cool, we'll slice it up and time to eat. Alright, it's been a few minutes. It's had a chance to cool, so I've made a couple of slices. You can see the swirls of cinnamon inside the loaf. Good texture. I've already took a couple of bites off of this piece here just to verify that it was indeed tasty. And that's it. A cinnamon roll bread, easy to make and very good. So I hope you give it a try. If you do, let me know in the comments how it came out for you. Thanks and have a good day.